Welcome to ChiroSphere, where we talk about all things chiropractic and some things not so chiropractic. I'm Dr. Ray Foxworth, your host for ChiroSphere and CEO of ChiroHealth USA, the network that works for chiropractic. Today, our guest is the one and only Holly Jensen, a powerhouse, a live wire in the world of chiropractic operations and team leadership. As the Chief Operations Officer at Cash Practice Systems, Holly brings a wealth of expertise and knowledge to the table. Her passion lies in helping chiropractic practices increase revenue and enhance client retention, making her an invaluable asset to the chiropractic profession. Holly's contributions extend far beyond the operational realm. As a motivational speaker and master CA trainer, she possesses a unique ability to ignite enthusiasm and drive in others, empowering chiropractors and their teams to thrive. Recognized for her outstanding leadership skills, Holly has been honored as one of San Diego Business Journal's Women Who Mean Business, a testament to her impact and influence in the industry. Today on ChiroSphere podcast, we'll hear her insights and strategies for success in chiropractic practice management. So welcome, Holly.
Yay, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Great introduction. I'm pumped up.
There you go. I don't know that I've ever seen you not pumped up, Holly, which is always high energy, always a good time. So you've spent over 2 decades working closely with with my good friend, Dr. Miles Bodson, and leading operations at Cash Practice Systems, or as you and I were talking about earlier, people may not know, but actually Miles works for you, as I understood. Kind of like in my world, when people called and asked me a question, I said, well, do you want to talk to the owner or someone who knows what's going on?
Yeah, but you know what Dr. Bodson says? He always says, like, although I'm in the employer, she's the boss. Like, she's running the show.
Yeah, it's good that both of us, Miles and I, understand that dynamic and quite frankly, love it because we don't have to be in charge of anything.
Right.
So along your way, can you share with us 2 or 3 key insights or lessons that you've learned in your journey that have really been instrumental in helping chiropractors and their practices succeed?
Yeah, I'm gonna go back all the way to 2002. The internet had been out for just a few years.
Thanks to Al Gore.
Right. Yeah. And so I originally, when Dr. Bodson hired me, I was just supposed to come in and file. Now, this is back when we still had paper charts. There was no electronic healthcare records back then. And so they needed somebody to come in and file. And so I was originally hired for 4 hours a week. And after I had been there for a month, Dr. Bodson comes to me and he's like, hey, I'm going to be hiring for a front desk chiropractic assistant. Would you be interested? And I told him, I'm like, oh gosh, like, I've never answered a phone professionally before. I've only been a mom, a daycare provider, a waitress. I don't think I would be any good at this. And I will never forget these words because it changed my perspective. And he said, if you're willing to learn, I'm willing to train you. And I thought, oh my gosh, like this doctor wants to invest in me, and I'm just this mom with like no formal background. And I was really taken back and I was really touched by that. And so I'm like, okay, let's do this. And so I was new to chiropractic. I had received chiropractic care in the past just for pain, but working at the Chiropractic Wellness Center was like a whole new thing for me. I had no idea the power of chiropractic. And so as a patient, here's another key takeaway is receiving care, going through the new patient consultation, exam, x-rays, receiving care, getting progress exams, seeing the goals, Dr. Bodson outlined the goal of care, but seeing the progress that I was making towards the goal, like I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is absolutely amazing. So witnessing my own miracles, the miracles in our patients, and then my family receiving care. And I'm just like, oh my God, I'm in love with chiropractic. And, it's sad because to this day, doing this for over 20 years, I'm out speaking with chiropractic assistants and they tell me they've never even been adjusted. They have no idea what goes on in an exam. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no wonder CAs have a short time span that they're with their chiropractors because they're not being invested in. And then that leads me to the next thing is Dr. Bodson continued to empower not only me, but our entire team by taking us to events, chiropractic seminars, philosophy meetings, and really helped dipped us. And it was my very first Parker Las Vegas seminar, like 22 years ago, where I was exposed to collaborating and connecting with other chiropractors, other CAs, getting to hear these amazing speakers. And there was like this fire that ignited in my belly. And when we came back from Parker, I told him, I'm like, I want to be a career CA. I want to do this for the rest of my life. I want to work right alongside you. And of course, he's thrilled to hear this. He's like, yes. From at even one point, I wanted to go to chiropractic school. I wanted to be a chiropractor. And he's like, no, you can never leave. Like, just do what you're doing, be an office manager.
Not selfish at all.
That's selfish at all. But I had 4 kids. That would have been really hard at that time. They're all under the age of 10. And so but I just being invested in and then being empowered to just learn as much as I can learn and become a leader, which I didn't even know that I had any leadership skills, but by him allowing me to fall and get back up and give me feedback, it really shaped and molded me into the person who I am today. And of course, I have to give my amazing husband credit because without his love and support, there's no way I could have been in the position that I am today.
Yeah, that's awesome. A couple of things that I hear in that conversation are, as an employer, we need to not look at people as they are, but who they can become. And it is so not strange, but it's so neat to hear your story in Miles because it's a replication of the story that I've had with Christy.
Yes.
I literally hired Christy on a Sunday night on Craigslist. I'd never been on Craigslist. We had Chiro Health was in its growing phase, and we had to have, that's back when we were doing everything by paper and people would mail in enrollments. And I had to have someone process the enrollments and the credit cards. So Christy started out, literally put the ad up Sunday night. She responded about 30 minutes later. I had her come in the next morning, and it's been 15 years ago.
I love that.
And to see her go from really getting out of her comfort zone, the first time she was asked to speak, and then to kind of blossom into that. So Miles and I really get to see the joy of, like you said, investing in someone and then seeing them go beyond your expectations. Expectations probably one of the most rewarding things that I've ever experienced. And I'm sure it's been the same for Miles. But in your situation, I've heard that saying, a leader's not a leader until a leader creates other leaders.
Yes.
And so I think you've done a lot in that realm with the team that you've helped build. So what are some of your insights? You've talked about how Miles brought you on, invested in you, which doctors, I think it's a necessity. The practices that have high turnover of CAs, I've told this story before. I've been to an event before where the doctors bragged about how many CAs he fired. And he tells me this, and I said, you freaking idiot.
That's gross.
And he said, what do you mean? I said, that is nothing more than a reflection of your inability to hire the right people, your willingness to train them, and you wonder why you got chaos in your practice. You wonder why you're putting out fires because you're the freaking arsonist.
Yes. That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, it is crazy. So how have you taken what Miles did with you, and as you begin to build your team, what do you look for when you're trying to find a key person to bring on?
There's a speaker that I love
Let me
listening
hit the
to.
pause button
Yeah.
on, because what you shared before we went live on this is you've got people that have been with you for over a decade and longer. That's not normal in the chiropractic, or that's rare in the chiropractic space. So what do you guys do different? Because y'all have an amazing team.
Thank you. I think, what we look for, and I didn't come up with this. Patrick Leonici, he's a speaker that I
Yeah.
listen to, and he talks about looking for people who are hungry, humble, and smart. And you can actually Google that. He's got a whole white paper on it of things to look for, questions to ask your team members, questions to ask in an interview process to identify that skill set and those traits in employees. And that's been something that I feel like has been a guiding principle for us in looking for people, and also combining it with our core company values. And I think that's important too. Dr. Bodson had us all sit down, all of the leadership team, and sit down and really come up and work on our core company values. What does this mission mean to us? And these are our guiding principles that direct us in everything that we do, every interaction, whether it's on phone or email or in person. Our guiding principles are leading us towards our mission. And our mission really is to help as many patients as possible achieve chiropractic care through our proprietary software that gives doctors the tools that they need to convert more patients, retain more patients, and ultimately that results in having higher revenue. But you cannot do that alone, doctors. Like, you have to have a team of people, and you have to be able to identify the skill sets and the traits that they bring to the table, and then empower your team to use those strengths in areas that'll best serve the needs of the business. And so I think having our this clear vision of what we expect, and the avatar, the type of person that will fit into this culture that we've created, it's easy to identify that in even just a phone conversation. If we have a new position open and we're doing an initial phone interview, you can hear that, and especially with all the technology we have today, one thing that we do is we ask applicants to send us a video of, like, what about you is different and unique that you will add value to our team. And we list out what our core values are and our mission statement is, because they don't align with that, then you're going to be able to see right through that. And so like today, we just had a team meeting. Every single week we have 1 hour and 15-minute meeting on every Wednesday morning with our team, and we're training on something. And today we did something a little different. We're training on responses of, like, how to answer calls. And so, like, our support team, they may be like, oh, I get the same kind of calls helping people to do X, Y, and Z. Whereas another department, they'll get very specific questions. They need strategies and help in regards to patient onboarding and patient journey and things like that. So I broke them out into different teams, different people from different departments, and then I gave them scenarios that they had to role play. One was the caller, one was the representative, and they had to role play these different things. And that's exactly what we did in practice. We would say, okay, if a patient calls asking what technique does the doctor use, how do you answer that? And a new CA might be like, what? I didn't know there were different techniques. It's just an adjustment, right? So, but if you're not role playing that and practicing it, how do you expect your team to be able to walk the walk, talk the talk, and having a cohesive patient experience or customer experience really is what you want to make sure, because people, they love consistency. And if they go through, and I love the E-Myth, one of the first books Dr. Bodson had me read with Michael Gerber's email.
On my
And it's
shelf.
all about creating a
Listen.
consistent experience.
Yeah.
And that was really eye-opening for me. That was literally like, I'm probably a CA, I'm 6 months old. And he's like, read this book. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I read it and I'm just like, okay, I get it. I want to make sure every time a patient walks through the door, have my smile on. I'm like, Mary, oh my gosh, it's so great to see you, And so, but I can't be the only one doing that. That has to be something that's just like part of our culture. That's what everybody does. When Mary walks through the door, or John walks through the door, we're doing that with everybody. So it's just creating that culture and that expectation and role playing it and making time to role play. I hear doctors all the time. They're like, I'm so busy. I team training. We do a 10-minute huddle every Wednesday morning. Well, a 10-minute huddle is not going to cut it. Like you got to do
No.
more than that when you're investing in your team.
Yeah. A couple of things that you said really, really resonate with me. The importance of those core values. So our team has a meeting every Monday morning, and we have our 4 or 5 core values, but we don't just we actually read them every Monday morning. But anybody that is using core values, I would challenge you to do this. Take the core values and then ask your team members who demonstrated this core value this week. And so we literally go through each one of you. Are you a first responder? Were you exceptional in every encounter? Give us examples of this or that. And here's something that really has made, I think, a big difference in the cohesiveness of our team. We don't just talk about core values and using them when we're external facing. Core values are even more important with your colleagues, with your coworkers, because if you're being exceptional in every encounter with the outside world, but you're a son of a bitch to your internal world, boy, you talk about causing problems. And so it's not just an external facing thing. It truly is. How do you begin to instill those values in the people just in their day-to-day lives? And I'll give you a couple of examples that have just been brought forward. You go to the Lowe's store, you check out, and you realize that they didn't charge you for if you happen to get a human to check you out.
Right.
I got employee of the month there last month, but somebody checks you out and you realize they missed something and you're walking out to your car. There might have been a time when I thought, oh man, I got to hit a Lowe's today. But Holly, by reading, having personal and professional integrity, when you read that and hear that every Monday morning, guess what it makes you do? It makes you walk back in the damn store and say, you forgot to charge me for this. And people look at you like you're from another planet. Well, wow, I've never had anybody come back in and do that. But, I think the benefit of the core values and you guys, going over them every week is critical because it really does help build character and accountability with one another. The other thing that you mentioned was role playing. One of the things Aaron Reynolds, who's worked with us for years now and is a gym, he goes through this practice called a question in a cup. So we'll write out these questions, have them in a plastic cup, and we pass them around the table and have the team members, answer the question. And you mentioned the technique thing. I'll never forget. I forget who the consultant was, but he played tapes back of actual calls to doctors' offices and asking that, well, what technique, how does that doctor treat headaches? And the response was, well, he uses this little clicky thing.
Oh gosh.
And you're going like, okay. And then so I started recording a couple of my patient interactions with staff. And I'll never forget the first time I recorded one of my staff doing a financial report of findings. I wanted to crawl under the table.
Yeah.
It was horrible. And so, docs, if you don't do anything else, go get you a cup. It doesn't have to be a Stanley cup. But put down, the most common things that people call and ask about and some uncommon things, and just to see how people think on their feet. And it really is empowering. I mean, people hate to go through the drill and feel like they're on the spot, but how do you want them to be able to interact with people? How do you expect them to interact at a high level if they haven't had that training? So it's a very simple exercise, but man, it really does pay off.
Yeah, and I think the more confident, like the more you role play, like it's so awkward. I remember when like the first time we did it, I wanted to throw up and I'm like, my armpits are sweating and I'm like, oh, I don't want to role play. Oh, it's so uncomfortable. uncomfortable. Like, so, but you get through it and you overcome that. It's a temporary feeling, right? You overcome it, you get through it, and then you're empowered with more information. And you're like, next time you role play it, you're like, I got this. Role play it again. Now, like, oh, I can teach this. And so you just keep getting better and better at it. And so it really makes it so that you could really take it to the next level
Yeah.
at each interaction. But however, I will say, to this day, we will still role play common scenarios, even though we have somebody who's been on our team for 15 years. We're going to role play it again, just like with major league sports players. They're still out there catching ground balls and
Yeah.
all the same things that little league guys do, because you have to master the basics before you can become an expert at something.
Yep, no doubt. That is, I think that happens with any skill. If you're not constantly or consistently making sure you've got the basics down, I've seen this happen in practice many times. I'll put a policy or something in place, and I think it's going on. I think it's being handled that way. And then you find out 6 months later, why isn't such and such being done? Well, I don't know. It just, things fall by the wayside. And so even with your policies and procedures, while you may have them in the perfect book up on the shelf, making sure that they're actually kind of like some of the doctor's compliance plans. Yeah, it's
Right.
still in the shrink wrap.
Right.
But just making sure that not only the conversations that are happening, but the procedures, like Gerber talks about, that consistency and having the systems to make sure that that you don't have fail points. And anything can degrade over time. It's almost like making copies of a copy of a copy. It's just
Yeah.
going to degrade. And so when you hire new people and they're trained by someone who has put in their resignation, they got one foot out the door and their brain's already gone, what do you expect you're going to get?
Yeah.
And so, sometimes I think the worst thing you can do is have the person that's on their way out training the person that's on their way in. So, just think about that, Doc. I don't think there's anything more important you can do than, number one, hire the right people and make sure that you're investing in them to train them to be the best they can be. So,
Yeah.
all right, everybody, hang tight. We're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. We'll see you shortly. Welcome back to our podcast. We're here today with Holly Jensen, the live wire. Every time I see you just so vivacious, so fun to be around. You bring life to the party, as they say. So a couple of other questions. When you guys are hiring, are you more prone to hire someone who already has some of the skills that you think they need? Or are you, like what Miles did with you, are you hiring for work ethic? Are you hiring for
personality?
more the non-tangible things, who they are, their character, that type of thing? So where do you guys go looking for people, and what is it, the couple of core things they must have before they get past Holly? And
That's a great question. So I think when it comes to when we're hiring, we're not necessarily, like, of course, it's a bonus if somebody has background in chiropractic, right? Because that would just make it easier. However, we have learned that as long as people, really what we're looking for is their ability to communicate. You've got to be a great communicator. Personality, like if it's really awkward, somebody's not getting good eye contact, like you're out. Like, so you can still be a great communicator and have a great personality and know nothing about chiropractic, but as long as you have a desire to learn, and we actually give some tests and different role-playing scenarios. We take them through a 3 interview, like in-person interview process, and like 1 phone interview. So it's a pretty lengthy process. And so we've got a lot of different questions, and they're not being interviewed by the same person each time they have an interview, because I might sniff out something that somebody else isn't. I feel with my personality type being so a live wire, people tell me things they just shouldn't say in an interview. I make them feel comfortable, and they just say things. I'm like, okay, well, you're out. But so But normally by the time they get to me, they've already, you know, they've gotten through the American Idol interview panel.
Yeah.
So
You talk about things they shouldn't tell you. I was interviewing this young lady for a position, and one of the things I like to ask her, what's the last book you read? And my jaw dropped when she said 50 Shades of Grey. I said,
oh,
you probably don't, you don't have to tell me that you read the Bible, but you probably shouldn't tell a potential employer that, or maybe you should.
you know, one question I love asking in the interview process is like, what's your greatest accomplishment this far? It could be personal or
Mhm.
professional. And one of the answers I got was, you know, I wanted to be rodeo queen. And so I had done all these classes and I tried out and I was not elected to be rodeo queen and it broke my heart. And so it made me work even harder. And I did everything that I needed to do. And the following year, I was crowned rodeo queen. But it taught me the biggest lessons of my life
There you go.
was to, you know, overcome, you know, when you fall down, you get back up and you learn from it and you move on. And I'm like, that is good. I want you on my team like that. I didn't say that, but I'm thinking that. But just like people being able to recognize even when they fail and they can get back up, I think is really powerful.
That's
But you
good.
know, earlier when you first asked me, when we first started this conversation, and Miles had asked me like, "Oh, you want to be a CA?" And I'm like, "Oh, I've only just been a waitress, just a mom."
Mhm.
Those I actually don't like hearing people say that because those are limiting beliefs. They really don't know the potential that they have. And I'm so happy that he was able to overlook that on me by me. I don't know if he identified like I had some limiting beliefs. And I mean, being just a mom is freaking amazing. And
No doubt.
it's a badge of honor now. But back then, I don't know. Maybe I was just like, I've never had a professional job. I'm just this, I'm just that. So being empowered, I think really helped my confidence. And that's what I want from our team as well. So when I hear people saying things that are a little bit negative context about themselves, it's an opportunity for me to be like, being just a waitress, that's amazing. I bet you learned a lot of skills when it comes to communication because you're earning a tip, right? Like there's a lot of ways to kind of spin that and help
Yeah.
people see a more positive side so that they can overcome that and feel more confident and own that story because that really helps them propel
Mhm.
forward.
You know, I forget who it was that said this, but we do have a lot of limiting beliefs. Larry Marks, and that's who it was, talks about the influence of your mother, father, sister, brother, preacher, teacher.
Yes, that.
And when you've heard growing up, who do you think you are? What makes you think you can do that? A lot of that is, old tapes that we have in our head.
Yeah.
I've had an employee in the past that um, almost everything she said was, "Oh, I'm sorry," And I said, where does that come from? You don't need to apologize for calling me to tell me something. I'm sorry to bother you. It is. I said,
Mhm.
you don't realize that's a tape playing in your head over and over and over. And so I really started challenging her. I said, don't you ever tell me you're sorry for talking to me, for calling me, for letting me know something's going on. So that is a limiting belief. And people that aren't made aware of that have no idea probably how they're holding themselves back, just for
Mhm.
those negative thoughts. And again, you mentioned going to Parker and kind of opening your eyes, and it's a whole different world when you realize that some of what is holding you back is yourself. And like Mark had
So,
said, mother, father, sister, brother, teacher, preacher. So sometimes we just need to flush all that stuff and
yeah.
start over. So let's pivot a little bit. You guys at Cash Practice are known for increasing revenue and enhancing client retention. That's
Yeah.
clearly a goal for any practice. So, what strategies or initiatives have you found most effective in helping docs achieve those goals?
Gosh, I think probably the number one thing is giving patients um, a forecasted care plan, like letting them know what the goal of care is, what the treatment plan is. And at Cash Practice, we provide the care plan calculator, which allows the doctor to be able to list out the services and products that will be rendered during a specific time frame. It includes a good faith estimate, which is what you got to do with the Patient No Surprises Act. And more importantly, you have to compliantly discount, which is why we integrate with Chiro Health USA to make sure you're doing things compliantly when it comes to packaging up your care and giving them affordable payment options. And I really believe care plans are the foundation of patient retention, because when you can remove the thought of money, you get the money out of the way. And by the way, this is regardless of they have insurance or not. I hear a lot of doctors like, oh, well, I start billing their insurance, and then once their insurance is exhausted, then I put them on a program of care. And that doesn't always work, because the patient's like, oh, would you look at that? I'm feeling better. I'll see you next January when my insurance kicks back
Mhm.
in. But if you can put them on a program of care right from the beginning, and they're making let's say, a monthly payment towards the total cost of care, it removes the thought of money so that you can focus on patient care, focus on patient education. And the side effect of that is patients not stopping at the front desk to pay because their payments are automated. So then you have happier staff because they're not chasing down money all the time. Your collections have increased. So I really think of everything that we do at Cash Practice. Care plans, forecasting care is what we call it, is really one of the most critical components a practice can put into place. And it ultimately, when we know the patient follows through, they're going to get better clinical outcomes. And that's really what we want at the end of the day.
Yeah. I've done a lot of research on why people's behavior and why they do what they do. And in the healthcare arena, whether it's chiropractic or any other field, one of the top reasons people stop treatment or don't follow through is financial uncertainty. They
Yeah.
really don't know what they're signing up for. And I am blown away when I still talk to practices that don't really do a formal sit down and have a financial report of findings, as it's often called. It is just mind blowing. And I think we have a tendency to, in chiropractic, for whatever reason, to really overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
I tell the story. I walked in the orthodontist with my two sons, and in less than 30 minutes, I'd bought $7,000 worth of orthodontic care. You know, as I said a few weeks ago on a podcast, they put the picture up of my kids' teeth on the big screen. I said, "Oh God,
Actual
let me pay you to take that down." And they say, "Well, here's the care, and it's going to take 3 years, and you can either pay it up front with a 10% discount or a coupon book." I said, "Well, give me two coupon books." And you know what? We never missed an appointment, never had an issue with payment because, like you said, you got all of the barriers out of the way. That model of having people pay a copay or payment every time they come in. It's like they come in, they feel better, they get adjusted, and then we roll up a newspaper and whack them on the nose with a copay. What's the
Right.
last thing they remember? They remember
Yeah.
the copay. And so the next time, if they are feeling better, they think about the copay rather than getting the care they want.
Yeah. They'll be like, I'm going to go to
Yeah,
Starbucks
yeah,
instead. Right.
yeah, yeah. The other thing that I jokingly say is when something's on auto payment, you just kind of set it and forget it. That's why I was a member of 3 gyms at the same time. I never went, but I felt great. It's just crazy. So, a couple of other questions here. Your team, as I said, is so noticeably on. I don't think I've ever met anybody that worked for Cash Practice that wasn't having a good day. Now, clearly, everybody doesn't wake up and they aren't having a good day. I mean, all hell could be breaking loose personally. Um, can you share some of the techniques that you've used for helping maintain motivation and helping people get into showtime mode? Uh, like I said, especially people have challenging times. Everybody's going through a challenge. So what have you found to be effective to help people, to help your employees stay on, if you will?
Yeah. So, well, one thing that we do is every single year, we take personality tests. The Myers-Briggs and
Mm-hmm.
the Enneagram test. And so everybody, they take these tests, and then we have a big team meeting about it. And we have a chart where we plot everybody. This is everybody in this group who is an INFJ or who is a 6 on an Enneagram. We plot it out, and then we take turns collaborating with each other on how to communicate with us, whether it's written, in person, virtual, like, because really communication is key. So if you could see your coworker is struggling a little bit, maybe that you could tell they're a little on edge or having a bad day, you're already armed with like how to communicate with that personality type. That's not offensive. That comes from love and empathy and wanting the best for them. And most of the time, if people are, they are experiencing something, maybe they just got in a fight with their spouse and then they had to come to work, right? You're carrying that, you're a little bitter, but we've number one acknowledged that as soon as you talk about like, hey, I noticed that you seem a little bit upset today. Is everything okay? Sometimes that's all somebody needs to hear, is just somebody to acknowledge their demeanor is different. And then number two is being able to communicate in a way with love and empathy, like I said earlier, and just be like, make time to, I'd love to take you out for a cup of coffee and hear what's going on, but we do have, this call that or this training or this meeting that we're doing. So game on, high five. It's like kind of change your state. Tony Robbins talks about that a lot, changing your state. And so for me personally, before I got on this podcast with you today, I was a little bit nervous, but I'm like, why am I nervous? I know what I'm talking about. But so what I did is I put on some music and I dance around, I changed my state, and then I'm like, all right, game on. Like, let's do this. So
yeah, I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins, and that is so true. How you present yourself when you're not feeling up to it. I mean, it is. You got to learn to flip the switch. And even Tony Robbins has been at this for decades. And I was just on a 4-day training thing with him recently. And he talks about before he goes out on stage, we perceive him as being always pumped up, but he has to do that himself, and then sometimes you just got to reach down and pull yourself up by the bootstraps and realize that if I'm not there, if I'm not present like that, is that person that I'm interacting with really getting the full benefit of our interaction? And sometimes it's easier to get yourself in a positive state when you aren't focused on what's wrong with you, but what's the experience going to be like with the next patient you walk in the room with.
Yes.
It really is. When you if you're not going to do it for yourself, understand that your state or how you might be interacting with people is going to affect the next person that you encounter, whether it's as a patient or a client or whatever. I think we're sometimes more prone to give it all when it's for someone else rather than just for ourselves.
You are so right on that. And one of my mentors, I have many mentors, including you, Dr. Ray, but one of my mentors is Roberto Monaco. Oh my gosh, I can't say enough amazing things about him. And for those of you who don't know who Roberto Monaco is, I like to think of them as you attend one of his classes and it's like a speaker's finishing school, right? Like he teaches you how to be really the best communicator, speaker, that you can be. And we got on a meeting one day and he's like, oh, I'm not feeling that well. And I could tell he's not feeling that well. And I'm like, we can reschedule this. And he goes, no, I've already changed my state. I know that when I come into this meeting, I want to give you 110%. So I'm pushing that aside. I'm moving forward and I'm just like, yes, like that's what we all need to be doing, is not be like a whole woe is me and I'm sick and I want my mommy. It's like save that for when you get home, when you're with your husband, right? Like,
yeah, no doubt. So you guys interact with hundreds and hundreds of practices a year, much like we do. What are you hearing from doctors and their staff about new challenges or the most pressing challenges that they're facing today?
I think one of the most pressing challenges that they face today has literally been the same thing that had been going on for the last, oh gosh, 10 plus years is patients want to use their insurance, and the doctors or the team has a hard time letting the patient know the total cost of care because they think patients just want to use their insurance. There's a lot of great languaging, and Dr. I know ChiroHealth USA has some really great scripts on that too. It's just changing the conversation so that it could be the patients can understand the value of care being provided and where you are able to help them when it comes to providing payment plans or discounts. And so I think that's always been something that practices have been facing, is just like they want to use their insurance. How do I tell them that their insurance company, we can only build a care plan that 12 visits covered, but they think that their insurance company covers 24 visits, but those of the 12 are based upon medical necessity. And they just get caught up in all that mess. And it really can be easier. They just need to know that there's other way, and they need to reach out to the resources like our company, Cash Practice, your company, ChiroHealth USA, because we really have figured this out to make it easier for patients to get care regardless of their insurance benefits.
I used to tell our team, I never want dollars and cents to stand in the way of patient care. So, that doesn't mean $1 down and $1 a week. I mean, we got to remain profitable, or you can't run your practice. But, if people know you're trying to help them get the care and you find a way to make it affordable for them, most people will agree to care. I mean, you know what? Guess what, Doc? There's a reason they came to your office.
Yeah.
They needed help. Just don't blow it by ambiguity. I love telling the story when one of the most dreaded calls in the chiropractic practice is, how much is the first visit? And as I tell the story, our staff has been taught to break out into what I call the chiropractic two-step. We dance all around it. Well, there is no set fee for your first visit. We have a schedule for a complimentary, yada, yada, yada. I mean, you know the drill. And at the end, the patient's going to like, you didn't answer my question. And often the reason we can't answer the question is, in our world, the fee has depended upon who's paying the bill. And that's bullshit. I mean, it should not depend on that at all. And if you have the proper scripting to say, well, Miss Jones, it might depend on your insurance. It could all, there is no set fee for the first visit, but it also depends on what your insurance company requires. And you shut up, and if they say, well, I don't have health insurance, and you have that conversation. If they do have it, then you have this conversation. And it's really not that complicated. You talk about a good exercise for the question in the cup.
Oh, yeah.
Put those kinds of questions in the cup and have whoever your front desk or insurance staff is really kind of go through that and role play that. At one point in practice, I mean, I tracked almost everything. Doctors will look at how many new patients they had and, we had X number of new patients. What often they don't look at is how many new patients called and scheduled an appointment but didn't show up. And did Susie have 90% of her people show up, and Betty had 25%? You got to listen. I mean, it happens. And when you begin to see that, you realize that, wow, someone's on script, someone's winging it, or they're not comfortable doing it. And, those things are just important to be able to look at that. And when you look at the number of people that scheduled and then never came in, there's also a reason for that. And you got to dig into that, because quite frankly, you could have 25, 50% larger practice if the people that scheduled just actually showed up.
Oh my gosh, yes. And that, that's something I'd love for your listeners to check out, loyalpatientjourney.com, loyalpatientjourney.com. It's a tool, a free resource that we developed to help doctors identify all of these danger zones where patients drop out. And one of those things is the first interaction that you have with that patient. There's very specific things that you need to say and do to get that patient to even show up. So I love that you bring that up, because but the loyal patient journey identifies these things for you that are common, like the pain goes away, the insurance stop paying, it's time to pay again, transitioning from corrected to wellness. Like there's all of these really identifiable areas
Mhm.
where patients have the opportunity to leave the practice, and you have to neutralize
You got
those
to be, you
dropout
have to
zones.
we typically react when that happens, when what we really should be doing is be proactive. If
Yeah,
you know that's a possibility, what things are you doing upstream to make sure, or to at least, there's going to be a certain percentage of people that drop out, probably in that
yeah,
10% range. I mean, no matter what you do.
yeah,
But when you're seeing, 40, 30, 20% of your patients not following through with care, not making the next appointment, you need to look upstream. Don't look at, oh, here's the problem, there's a problem here. You got to look upstream to see what might have been causing that problem. So I think it's a wonderful resource that you guys are willing to share with everyone. So I got some fun questions.
okay.
Who's your hero and why?
Who's my hero and why? Oh my gosh, I wish you would have told me, asked me that
Well,
question
no, then it wouldn't
earlier.
be for fun.
Yeah, okay. My current hero, and this might sound a little cliche, but I am gonna say it's my husband. He is my absolute rock. We're going to be celebrating our 25th wedding anniversary here
Congrats.
next week. And he, as an end of marriage, you have your ups and downs, but he is so incredibly supportive and is my biggest cheerleader,
That's awesome.
even on my worst days. And I I give him a lot of credit. I don't do the same for him sometimes. So, um,
Well,
yeah,
that's
he really lifts me up and empowers me
that's awesome.
to just deliver my
So
best.
what talent do you have that most people don't know about?
That they don't know about. Well, I'm not sure if everybody knows, but I am a gardener. I do post it online
Mhm.
sometimes. But I'm not a great gardener. I love making mistakes and trying to re-engineer them to figure out
Why did I
I'm
kill
also
that plant?
yeah, well, I'm also a mad scientist. I don't, even if it's a weed, I'm like, well, let's just see what happens. Like, is it really a weed? What could does it have any medicinal purposes? Like, can I get high off of it? No, I'm just kidding.
Uh,
But just so gardening, I have a great passion of gardening. I love pollinators. I have a pollinator garden that I just started this year. So I'm just a lover of nature, and that's my jam right now.
that's neat. Well, Holly, thanks so much for spending some time with us. And thank you all for listening to the ChiroSphere podcast. Please subscribe and share the podcast with your friends and let us know who you'd like to hear from in the future or what topics you'd like to cover. We'll be glad to try to get those on. If you want to learn more about Chiro Health USA and how we can help you develop a compliant, profitable discount strategy that will absolutely grow your practice, income, and most importantly, profitability, call us at 888-719-9990 or visit our website at chusa.com. And that's how you spell Chusa to find out why Chiro Health USA is the network that works for chiropractic and you. Thanks again, Holly.